Welcome back to Speaking Queerly. We're a podcast hosted by Kaleidoscope Youth Center, which is Ohio's largest and longest standing organization serving and supporting LGBTQIA plus youth and young adults. I'm Mallory. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Civic Engagement and Advocacy Manager here at KYC. And I'm so excited. I know we talk a lot about sports on this podcast. It's just become kind of a running joke that every episode I'm going to somehow work swimming into it one way or another. And you're in luck if that's kind of your jam, because today we're talking all about sports. And I'm here with Dallas Aldridge, and I'll let you introduce yourself to the listeners.
So my name's Dallas Aldridge. I use he, him pronouns. I was the executive director for the 2021 Gay Softball World Series in Columbus.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into all of that, like the Gay Softball World Series and everything and anything that falls under that umbrella, right? Because I know that there's a lot of other, organizations involved with that as well. But I want to get to know you a little bit more too. So obviously you're here to talk about sports.
Yes.
But what is the sport like? What are some of the ways that you were involved in athletics, maybe when you were a young person?
Young. Very early on, I played, baseball, basketball, a lot of the youth sports because I had an older brother and sister and they both played sports. So I kind of learned from them. And then kind of through like my high school years, I really got away from it. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up going to college and, working. And then, it was like, oh, where did sports go? So later in life, I actually had friends that introduced me to softball in Columbus in 2004. Oh, wow. And completely fell in love with it again, and then have been playing and organizing since that time. So it's, I was very early on involved and then took a break and didn't really have it in my life, and then found it again and fell in love with sports again as a gay person at that point, not as, a youth.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So one thing that I've seen kind of on social media fairly recently is just, a TikTok trend, if you will, where people are talking about how like being in your 20s is really all about rediscovering the things that made you happy when you were like 10, right?
Yes.
And I think to some extent that's exactly as you described. You had these things that brought you joy as a kid, and you get busy when you're in high school and college. You kind of think you're gonna, take this different track and reinvent yourself, but really at your core, you had these things that brought you joy. Is that correct?
Exactly. From the first day going out to a softball practice, I met a new group of friends who have really become lifelong friends with the sport. And it was just outside of, being an adult, and, a lot of things in gay queer life are focused around bars and nightlife. And this became something completely different. It was, outdoors, it was being active, it was being involved. And it really just let me find some new people who really became more of my chosen family at that point.
Yeah, no, I love that. And exactly to your point, I find that it's almost a little hard sometimes to make queer friends, just because, like, exactly as you described, so many of the environments where those friendships are expected to form do center around nightlife and going out. And I know there's a lot of young people listening to this podcast who, that's not a space that's accessible to them, period, just because of their age, right?
Right.
And so it's nice to know that there's some spaces centered around hobbies rather than just, drinking that can help you find queer friends.
Yeah, and it's really focused, my attention, I started playing in Columbus, but after that first year and softball was ending, I was thinking, I don't want it to end yet this year. So I found my first tournament, and we drove to Memphis, Tennessee to play in an October softball tournament, I think in 2005, as a group. Came in second place, had so much fun, but that's really where I discovered NAGA, who was the North American Gay Amateur Athletic Alliance. That was my first introduction to a NAGA city. So that really opened up this whole other world of, there's all these other cities that have these softball leagues, and I met new friends that live in lots of other cities throughout the country. That really opened up lots of doors and opportunities.
Oh, that's cool. So talk to me a little bit more about NAGA. So like, what are the NAGA cities, and how can somebody get involved in this?
So NAGA is the national organization that has actually been around since 1978.
Wow.
With softball. So it's a long enduring organization that's really changed over time. I believe last year we hit 55 cities across the U.S. and Canada. And Naga has actually gone through some changes. In the past year, the name changed. So it's actually going to be International Pride Softball going forward. And they felt like that was more inclusive and more, telling the story about like what the organization is. When it was started, the name now just doesn't fit what it actually is. So Columbus joined Naga in 2008. Okay. So, they were members in the mid 80s. But it was hard to get teams to travel to the Gay Softball World Series, and that's a big part of what the organization is. So Columbus left, and then we rejoined. And then shortly after, we bid to host our first Gay Softball World Series, which was in 2010 in Columbus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no
so,
way.
So 2021 was really our third time. We hosted in 2010, 2015, and 2021. Oh. So we were, I'll say the new kids on the block when we came back in, and we really hit the ground running and hosted our first, second, and third. It became 11 years. It was really originally 10 years. 2020 with COVID and everything going on was canceled. So each city moved 1 year. But that's probably that's the shortest period of time any city has ever hosted 3 times in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, so we really put our foot out there and said, we're really gonna like step up and do this. And Columbus is the perfect city to host the Gay Softball World Series.
And why is that?
So Lou Berliner Sports Park, just south of downtown, is the largest sports softball complex in the U.S. and maybe the world.
I had no idea it was ranked that high. I mean, I drive by it all the time and I see the number of fields, but I had no idea that it was like that large comparatively.
It is. Most places you might get 4 fields or 8 fields. Some have 12 fields. This park has 31 softball fields in one park. So in 2010, that was the first time since the mid 80s that the Gay Softball World Series could be hosted in one park. So that was something new that a lot of people had never experienced. Usually you're driving across town to another, maybe a suburb or maybe another city to a park to see your friends play or people from your same city. So this really just like everybody fell in love with Columbus for the first time. And a lot of people, it was their first time here. And the comments that we got back are, everybody's so friendly. It's so welcoming. It's so that everybody kind of fell in love, and then it was okay. Now when are you doing it again?
Right.
So we were quickly like pushed to okay, let's step up and probably try to do this another time, because it's a lengthy process. You bid to host the event. It's kind of like the Olympics, I guess. You actually have to put a bid together and present in front of all the other cities, and they vote.
Wow.
So it's a competitive process, and we've done very well with that. So it's unique and different, and they love coming here. But to host in 2010, the process started in late 2007, early 2008.
No kidding. Wow.
And then it goes into the next year when you really finally wrap up. So it's a 3 to 4 year process to put the whole thing together.
Right. And then to do that so many times back to back.
Yes.
I mean, it's a testament to exactly as you described why Columbus is the perfect place for it, right?
It was. And one unique thing that we really had here is, and I don't know if you've talked about it on the podcast, is the Greater Columbus Sports Commission is really an asset to the city here. Mm-hmm. We met with them in 2008, and they were part of our bid process. So no sports commission had ever been part of an organization bidding for the Gay Softball World Series.
Really?
So this was very new. And Linda Logan, who's I believe she's the CEO now of the Greater Columbus Sports Commission, from the beginning was so open, so supportive. They have been the best asset for our organization to really bring sporting events. And we've been on the top 10 of their highest grossing sporting events for bringing revenue into the city for years.
Wow.
And we're being put up with things like the women's Final Four and large sporting events, and our event really falls in line with all of those things. So she really helped us put ourselves on the map in the city, and then has continued to work with the city and the county to help create funding, because it's not cheap to host this event.
Sure.
And she's been at the forefront, and her whole group, to help us improve it each year.
Right. That's amazing. And I think too, like, I mean, when you think of sports in Columbus, obviously the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is
Football.
football, Ohio State football, right? And I think it's cool to be able to, showcase sports in Columbus from like a non-OSU perspective, right? I don't know if this is going to get me like canceled or whatever for saying that, right?
We
But
still love the Buckeyes, but we also love the Crew, and we love the Blue Jackets. So we have some other favorites in there, but yeah, it's everybody thinks of football in Columbus.
exactly, right. So when you're talking, I mean, obviously this event brings in so many people, right? How, like, who can be involved in this, right? At what age ranges, what gender identity? I mean, like, who is welcome on these teams?
Yeah, so NAGA is an open division softball organization. And really what that means, it can be any grouping of people. You're not, it could be all female, it could be all male, it can be any mixture. You could have, a trans team, every player is trans on that team, or any combination of those groupings. So it's really open to who you want to form as a team. And then it's broken down into skill levels. So there are 7 different divisions that they break down. The highest division, which is A, some of the best teams. There are only 9 or 10 of those across the country.
Wow.
So those are like elite softball players, really fun to watch. But it goes down to an E division, which is really your beginner.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that play in the E division that they might go to the Gay Softball World Series and it's the first time ever playing in a tournament like that.
Right.
They just learned. They went out and they found a softball league. Like locally here, we have the Columbus Lesbian and Gay Softball Association.
Okay.
And we get to send so many teams to the Softball World Series. And so they may have found a team there, found that grouping of people, and then went to play in the Gay Softball World Series. Or there's a tournament in almost every city across the country that you can play throughout the year.
Sure.
So there's a big one coming up in Las Vegas in January. So that's one that a lot of teams from Columbus go because you want to get out of winter and go somewhere warmer.
It makes sense. Yeah, so there's ways that you could get involved here locally, and then it's kind of like you get out of it what you put into it in a way, or like,
Yes.
kind of make of it what you want. You could go to all of these bigger events, or you could just play locally. Is that my understanding?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can make it just, you want to play on the weekends, very recreational, very casual, or you can become, more competitive with it and want to go out and experience these other tournaments and other things. For most it's 18 and over, but we do allow younger individuals with a parent or guardian to sign off on a waiver. We have some younger people that have started to learn and play as well.
Oh, great.
So they might have a parent or a guardian that plays, and so we have some mother-daughter teams, mother-son team that are on the same team. So it's really neat to
That's
see that happen. And sometimes it might be a gay parent with a child playing, or the opposite. And so that it's just really nice to see when they kind of come out and experience those things together.
Right. And why is it, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, why is it so important to have this sports league that's truly dedicated to this like inclusive environment specific to folks in the LGBTQ community?
I think when you look at how these leagues started, most leagues, NAGA started in 78. Locally, Columbus, we started in 86. There were individuals that wanted to go out and do something. But at that time, they were really hiding. You weren't in the forefront that you see things now. And they started playing in a straight league, as you would say, and beating some of the teams. But, that came with its own comments and its own,
Really?
Challenges. So they really created our league now, but they were pushed to the back of Berliner Park. The city really worked with them, but they were known as the league that played in the back.
Wow.
And it is interesting to hear the beginnings of basically being hidden, and the stories that go around everything with being in the back. There's an interesting story about it was during a lot of the HIV/AIDS crisis. And there were people who, passed away, families didn't claim them. I know one that was, his ashes were actually buried under the pitcher's mound on one of the fields.
Wow.
And there's a couple trees in the back, on the very back fields that were planted by the league in memory of some of those individuals. So there's a little history in the back of how it started. But now when you see it, the Gay Softball World Series and how the league has grown, when we host it, we take over the entire park. So we've really grown from the back of the park being hidden to being in the forefront. And with the 2021 Gay Softball World Series, if you drove High Street at all, the banners along High Street all had the logo, the name, and the sky bridge that connects the Hilton to the convention center actually had the event logo on the sky bridge for that week.
Wow.
So we really took it from hiding to like, okay, we're going to be in your face. We're going to really put it out there, and it was great.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh, the story of the ashes and the trees and all that too. I mean, that's just remarkable.
And there's several stories like that. It's to how it started, and that's why I think the history of the leagues we don't really tell enough. And I think it's important to kind of know how we got where we are.
Right. Absolutely. And I especially think it's so relevant even today because, as I'm sure you're aware, as I'm sure our listeners are aware, there are so many bills across the country and including here in Ohio that are seeking to ban transgender athletes, specifically trans women and girls, from competing in K-12 sports. And it just goes to show, as you described, back decades ago, people had to play in the back of the fields, kind of tucked away, right?
Yes.
And even today, in 2023, people are expected to, hide their identities and, not be their true selves when they're playing the sport that brings them so much joy, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's so tough because, in some parts, we feel like we've made so much progress. But every, few steps forward, we take a few steps back because, we need to take everybody along with us on this journey. And if we don't all get there, then we all need to back up and stand up for them until they get the recognition they deserve and are able to really participate how they want to.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that, the organization has, renamed itself to emphasize like this is a pride softball league. This is not just for gay people. This is for everybody under that spectrum.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah, that's a very important piece of, I think, how even the organization is growing going forward. It's the U.S. and Canada, but they added international because it's really starting to pick up interest from Mexico and from the UK, and so there's other countries now that are wanting to be a part of this overall event because it is so welcoming.
That's awesome. Well, I know for swimming, every episode somehow ties back to that. I have practiced with a queer and trans swim team here in Columbus, the Ohio Splash, and so I know that they have IGLA, the International Gay and Lesbian Aquatics event that happens, worldwide. This past summer, it was in London. I know it's been in Palm Springs. It's been everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see how, whether it's softball or swimming, or I know there's a number of other sports too. You can meet people around the world through these athletics.
Yeah, I mean, sports in Columbus and especially, gay queer sports in Columbus are, you have NAGVA, which is the volleyball league. Softball and volleyball were two large leagues for a while. There's a lot of bowling leagues, and they run. Some of those are long, some of them are shorter. But within the last, I don't know the exact year, but 4 or 5 years, Stonewall Sports entered Columbus and really started kickball at that point. So the kickball league has grown significantly, and Stonewall Sports has added dodgeball, there's cornhole, there's darts. So there's, under their umbrella, they're doing multiple sports. They're actually looking at pickleball. Pickleball is becoming the new, I love pickleball, so I'm waiting for that one to start up. But
Sure.
there's a lot of opportunities for, if you don't know how to play softball, you don't know how to play volleyball, and you want to go out and learn some other sport, there's a lot of organizations out there that you can be a part of.
Right. And it's like a low pressure situation, right?
Yes.
If I in high school were to just up and take up volleyball, right, there's no chance I would have made the team, right? And that's not to say I wouldn't have hit the ball a couple times, right?
Right.
But now as an adult, to know that I could join a league like this and everyone's like, here, we're going to learn together,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, what you find is, the beginners, you're really teamed up with other beginners or people who, are really putting those teams together and teaching them how to play. There are some teams that just come out and play their games and they don't practice or anything throughout the week. They don't do anything else. There are other teams that you will see them out 2 or 3 days a week as a group, practicing, learning the game, really putting some effort into, making it more of what they want it to be.
Right.
So you can really find your own place there. That's why it's just so relaxed and easy that it becomes fun. You can make it competitive, or you can just go out and have a good time.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think, so much of the pressure of sports when you're in high school, college, it's because it's competitive and you have to make it to states and you have to compete at this next level, right?
Right.
And you can't just do the game because it's fun. And so I think taking some of that pressure off and knowing that you can compete if you want to, but also you could just go and kind of goof off on the sidelines if you want to, and if that's your participation or whatever,
right,
there's a place for you.
It's great. Yeah, there's so many opportunities, and even some of the divisions, we even have a 50 and older division.
Oh, great.
So at the Gay Softball World Series, it's called the Legends division now, so they have their own grouping. So they're really trying to make it where everybody kind of fits somewhere and can participate in some way based on their skill level.
That's awesome. So one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on today was to talk a little bit about the new program that KYC has started in partnership with you and the Gay Softball World Series, and hosted in Columbus, right? We'll get into that here in a second, but first, the KYC Sports Equity Fund is this new program that we are just launching where young people who are involved in K-12 sports, or maybe it's sports through, a club team, YMCA, whatever it is, we all know as participants in sports that this can be costly, right? We want it to be as inclusive as possible, but we also know there's fees associated with it, whether it's for uniforms or equipment or just general participation fees.
Yep.
And the Sports Equity Fund is a program that is going to allow young people to, request funding from KYC if they need a scholarship to go toward paying for their uniform or whatever. And our hope is that we can reduce those barriers to allow as many people to participate in sports as possible. But this program wouldn't be possible without you. And so could you tell us a little bit more about, how this is coming to be?
Yeah, each year the Gay Softball World Series, there's always a fundraising element for the local city. So each year we've given donations to KYC, to Stonewall. There's just been several organizations that we've really tried to help. With that, it's we really looked at 2021 and said, what are we really trying to do here? With the event itself, we tried to really make it the most diverse, open, inclusive event as far as our entertainment and our events, and we really tried to open up to everyone, and we tried to hit every demographic that we could with our events. Even with having Kim Petras as a headliner at the end, was a big highlight for us. So we were very excited there.
Sure.
So with that, when our fundraising was going very well, we made our regular donations, but we found we had some additional funding that we wanted to do something with. So we really went back and said, what's something unique and different? What's something that can leave a little lasting element of the event being here in Columbus? And that's when we kind of, brainstormed and came up with this idea of, could we, in some way, offer this to youth that might need assistance? So then it was like, okay, now how do we do it? And I think I reached out to Cliff Mason,
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and KYC seemed to be the natural fit. Because in our minds it was, we don't want opportunity and access to be a challenge for someone to not be able to participate. Because with sports, you as I kind of mentioned, you find your kind of like your chosen family or this new grouping where you might not have thought you fit in, but then you find a place. So we thought by giving them, not letting funding be that barrier, that we could try to help a little to start that process and let them continue to participate.
Absolutely. Well, because we know like there are so many young people who are working jobs in high school just to like, help make ends meet when they're in high school too. And so then to have to worry about how am I going to pay for my sports? How am I going to pay for my next like training classes, whatever it is relating to athletics, right? It's just creating those additional barriers. So to take one of those worries away, to make them a little bit more free to play these sports, that's huge. I can think about how helpful that would have been when I was in high school as well.
Yeah, and our donation from this originally, we're hoping this is the start. We're really wanting this fund to be, kind of like embraced by, some of the other local Columbus sports leagues and individuals who, maybe they'll make a donation to KYC, but maybe they'll make a small donation into the sports equity fund as well.
Right.
So there's going to be that opportunity that we can keep this going and really grow it into a program that I actually think is unique, and I don't know of any other across the country that have anyone else that started this. So I think KYC and us kind of helping start this process is a big step forward for Columbus.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially, as we said, during a time when, trans youth are under attack for, just wanting to play sports. And that's, only going to impact, other queer folks, right? It's going to keep pushing people to the back of the softball fields. And so removing whatever barriers we can to ensure that people know that they do have a place on the field, they do have a place in the pool, they do have a place on the court, right?
Yeah.
It's only going to, right? Because like you talk about you're being part of a team. Sure, you're getting those athletic benefits where you're, exercising, you're staying in shape, whatever, but also you're learning what it's like to be part of a team. You're learning what it's like to win and lose and to help out your teammates and cheer someone else on and recover from a loss. And those skills only help down the line when you're in your first job and you're trying, working through those, struggles as well, too. So this is only going to, open doors for people so much further down.
Yeah, there's so many life skills that can be built just through participating in some type of sport. And some of the sports are, they may be individual. Swimming, it's your competition in that lane.
Right.
But then other sports like softball, there's, 10 people on the field and 12 people batting. And, so you're a group of people and you have to learn to work with all of those different personalities. And that only goes, that goes so far in the workforce and in like real life when you have to, jump into that next, and those skills will help everyone.
Right. And talking about, starting that foundation so early on to know that, when I'm stressed, I'm going to go for a run, or when I'm, feeling anxious, I'm going to go hang out with my teammates. Having that foundation early on only means that later on in life, folks are going to be more inclined to turn toward joining a team as opposed to just sitting on the couch or whatever, right? And
right.
Keeping that community alive moving forward. Surrounding yourself with people is so important. It's something we all experienced during the pandemic, right? What it's like to be separated from your peers and teammates. And so anyway, to create these foundations and to, extend them back to younger generations all the way up to, as you mentioned, folks who are 50 and above or whatever, like.
Yeah, and you really, one thing I think you see on some of these softball teams is, you might have someone in their 50s, playing with someone in their early 20s, or maybe their, late teens. Mm-hmm. And the interaction and the skills they actually learn from each other,
yeah.
which is a very unique thing because, some people think, well, the younger people are only going to learn from the adults. No, it happens the other way
yeah.
all the time. To watch that interaction and see how they build with each other is just a great act. Like, it's so helpful for everyone involved.
Right, absolutely. I know for swimming, there's so much technique that was considered to be the standard however many decades ago, and now some things have changed. And so that's something I found being part of some master swim teams is exactly that, right? Somebody's like, oh, when I was in high school, this is how I learned it, and this is how we learned it now, and we're learning from each other. And just that intergenerational perspective is something we've talked about here on Speaking Queerly, and I just think it's so important, especially for queer friendships, to be able to have, friends of all ages, all backgrounds, and just know that there is, that uniting factor.
Yeah, it's fun because there's a pickleball tournament as part of this Las Vegas sports tournament. And one of their divisions is a multi-generational.
Oh,
and
cool.
You have to have someone 50 and over, and you have to have someone below a certain age as well on the same team of two people. So that gives a unique something unique that I don't think I've really seen in many sports, where they kind of put that
Right.
as a specific requirement. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing some of those things take place.
Right, right. One thing I always bring up is when you're playing, say, soccer as a kid, you're separated by like, this is the boys team and this is the girls team and this is the 8 and under league, and then you got 10 and unders, then you got 11 and unders, right? You have different genders and age separation.
Right.
With something like swimming, we don't have enough pools in the world to say this is just the practice for 8 and under boys, right? Or 11 and over girls. And so everybody is in the pool at the same time. And I think back to when I was younger and how I looked up to the older kids, and how when I was an older kid, how I could be that mentor for the younger swimmers. And that's only a finite age demographic too, right? 5 to 18 or whatever.
Right.
And so to think of how much you can learn and just know that your involvement in this sport can continue on for so much longer than just high school,
Yeah,
right? That's
you,
profound.
you can make these sports part of your entire life. There are people that are still in their 70s and they're still playing, gay softball and on softball teams.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that they also still have that opportunity to kind of be out there and be involved. And I hope to continue to play for a while.
That's awesome. Well, if there is somebody listening right now of any age, of any ability level, right, who wants to get involved playing softball here in Columbus, what's the first step they can take?
We're on the Columbus Lesbian and Gay Softball Association is on Facebook, Instagram. I think if you just Google that, you'll find the website. I believe it's www.clgsa.org. And you can find lots of information there about the league. There's 2 seasons. There's a summer season, it's a little longer. Then there's a fall season, and that's 5 or 6 weeks that actually just wrapped up last week. So that's one great place. If you're not in Columbus, International Pride Softball, you could Google, and you could find one of the other cities across the U.S. Locally, we have Cincinnati and Louisville and Indianapolis, but it goes, Toronto to LA to Las Vegas to Fort Lauderdale, New Orleans. There's Sioux Falls, Idaho. So there's a lot of cities that you might not even think of that have sports leagues and gay sports leagues that are opportunities, but people just don't know about them.
Right. And I'm sure you can look on Stonewall, for Stonewall Sports on Stonewall's website as well.
Yes.
And if these opportunities don't exist, like let's say, right, pickleball or badminton or any other sport that is out there that maybe doesn't have a team, you could start one too, I'm sure.
Correct.
All you need is a group of people who are interested in playing the sport as well.
Yeah, and I think what you'll find is that there's a lot of opportunity there now. Pickleball, we touched on briefly. Pickleball is going to start at some point. There's just a lack of courts across cities right now. That's what they're trying to figure out is, how do we fit in? And then there will be a queer pickleball league that falls either under Stonewall, under itself. It will end up somewhere. But there's a lot of different sports out there. There's even a climbing league that they actually go, climbing, and there's gaming, and there's so many different things that you don't think of as just an athletic. Like it's not like sport out on a field. There's other opportunities, and really all of those groups, they've been getting together I think once a quarter to really share within themselves, like here's what we all have going on. So we've kind of created this sports community to really try to help each other now.
Right.
Because most of the same people play this, that play that, and you're in different places. So we're trying not to create things where people are overlapping and like, you can't do this because you want to do this.
Right, exactly. Like I know there's like an LGBT hiking group as well, right? Queer
Yes.
Climbing Columbus, all these things, as you said, that aren't, when you think of sports, you think of like a soccer ball and a baseball, right? All the ball sports, if you will. But there's so many other activities to be physically active, to be building that community when you're outside of a space like a bar or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think it's the LGBTQ Outdoors. It's something like that on Facebook. Because I've actually gone on a couple of their hikes. They try to do them monthly. They're great. Jason Fallon is a person who organizes that here, and he's very involved in volleyball. So there's a lot of crossing over of the different opportunities that are available.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much for thinking of KYC and wanting to, invest that time and that resource into our organization to help young folks play sports, get involved in athletics, be part of a team. And if you are a young person who is interested in participating in sports, but cost is a barrier, feel free to apply for a scholarship under the new Sports Equity Fund. If you're wanting to learn more, you can always email mallory@kycohio.org. You can also visit our website, kycohio.org, and you can find all this information and more about how to participate. We're so excited to be able to get this off the ground, and we can't wait to see where it goes from here.
This has been a little dream, so that it's really kind of finally coming together. We hope this does give someone that opportunity or access that they maybe didn't have, so that we're hoping to impact some lives with this, and give people, a little taste of sports that might carry through their life.
Absolutely.
So, very excited.
And if you're somebody who is interested in, giving back to KYC, this just is a perfect example of how, you can designate your money to go toward whatever at KYC, right? You can volunteer your time. You could, donate items off our wish list, right? Or if you have this great idea for something that you think could benefit young people, you could create that as well. You can connect with us and help create a program of your own like this. So
Yes.
really is such a cool way of showing how giving is so much more than just I'm going to have $5 come out of my checking account every month or whatever, right? You can make an impact on people in
Yes.
one way or another. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here and talking sports with us and showing people how they can get involved.
Yes, we're very excited. We hope it's helpful.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Speaking Queerly. Like I said, if you have any questions, email mallory@kycohio.org. And this also goes for if you have ideas for things we can talk about on Speaking Queerly. If you have questions you want us to answer, send me an email and we'll absolutely do our best to cover that topic here. And if you're interested in making a donation to KYC to support all of our endeavors, you can visit kycohio.org/donate.